I never thought that I would talk about a Spider-Man film, yet here we are. Across the Spider-Verse, the second film into the Miles Morales trilogy. Is it as good as everyone's been saying it is? Undoubtedly. You will have fun, you'll be on the edge of your seat, you may cry, you may be overjoyed with excitement, and you will no doubt leave that cinema beyond impressed and wanting to run to Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, wherever, just to talk about it more. Just to express your viewing experience. And it's not often that you get a film or a piece of media that leaves you so fulfilled that you want to talk about it so much after. You want to continue that high, that excitement, that thrill that you got watching it. If you're doing that after a film, you have watched something that has moved you. Across the Spider-Verse is a beautifully strong sequel to Into the Spider-Verse. Not only being the second film into a trilogy, but coming off the back of Into the Spider-Verse, you have some very big shoes to fill. Artistically, narratively, sound design, animation-wise, structurally, everything had to be perfect. And basically, it all is. It fills those shoes and more. It does exactly what a sequel should do within a trilogy and leave you wanting more, seeking that third and final film, which I'm very glad that they actually stuck with. You see, Across the Spider-Verse is built very different in a way where it doesn't actually act as a legitimate sequel and more so plays back into the roots of being a foundational builder. What this means, just to simplify that further, is that it shares more in common with the first film being foundational in building blocks, meaning you're learning about stuff, you're learning about these characters, and you're getting bits and pieces of their development roots to grow further throughout the film. It has more in common with that than it does with being a legitimate sequel. And this is kind of an issue that a lot of trilogies suffer. If they're not pre-conceptualized from the beginning, your second film is always going to be weakest. Now, was this Miles trilogy planned from the beginning? I don't necessarily think so. Maybe lightly, there was talks of having 3 films, but you would have to gauge it off the success and reputation of the first film. If the first film didn't do well, we wouldn't have this one, of course. So now that we're here, they have to rewrite it and change a lot of things to redesign and fulfill the original trilogy that they might have had in mind. And that's giving them the benefit of the doubt. Just because of this alone, the idea of writing trilogies and how much you have to be in tune with the overarching narrative from the first movie to the final film, this middle one could have easily been really bad. Not because people didn't know how to write it, because you can lose sight of it very easily. And funny enough, all of this is the biggest problem that people have, that the narrative feels a little bit wish-washy, right? And the only reason it may even feel that way to you, even if you see it or not, is not because of the actual writing, but because of how they have structured this trilogy in an artificial way. In some ways, they have not designed this originally with the intent of being a trilogy. That first movie would have felt a little bit different, but they've done their best to retroactively fit these 2 other films onto the first, and they've done a phenomenal job in doing so. Now, because of this, you don't get something that's more of a sequel, but something that's more of a middle, and the middle for trilogies is also usually a building block. So funny enough with the outcome, they've reached more closely to what a trilogy entails than just being a sequel film. They could have easily gone the movie trilogy route and made this a starter and a closer, and then linked everything to the third film for the big climatic finale. That would have been easy. Instead, they redesigned things, they played it off in a way where it feels natural for it to be a part 1 and lead everything into part 2. Now, that doesn't mean you don't get conclusions or big high-arcing moments or just stuff that carries the film. Like, of course, you get all of this stuff. You just don't get it in a way that feels as starty and closey as a normal film. When that end credit rolls, most of the time you want your film to be finished there. But if you're writing a trilogy or if you're writing a parted film, this is kind of the only time creatively where you can have your story feel rather different. You can have people leaving the cinema asking questions, with mystery, with concern, with all of these different ideas, and that's exactly what Across the Spider-Verse does. It builds more of the story, more of Miles, even more of Gwen, and introduces you to this whole new world of Spider-Man, and it is incredibly beautiful to witness. If you're sitting here and wondering what is going on, that is the biggest reason people have problems with this film. The reason it's not a 10 out of 10 or a 9 out of 10, some places gave it 8, is because structurally it does not feel like a standard start and stoppy movie. Instead, it works more within the realm of being a trilogy and is more, to me personally, impressive because of it. Because trust me, that will pay off wholeheartedly in that third and final film. It's still beautifully conceptualized and well achieved. it is difficult to talk about this movie in a generalized way that doesn't mention spoilers or things that happen specifically, right? But I will say that I really love the evolution of Miles. For me, this is a story of family. If the first film is about identity and being true to yourself, this touches on those same subjects, but also brings in the equation of family and balance and responsibility, a lot of quote-unquote typical things that you'll see from the Spider-Man franchise, but this time it is challenged kind of directly. So you have Miles, his family, his responsibility, his balance of life, mixing that with his identity, but then you also have Gwen's. And to me, this is perfect. It's actually really strong how they open up this film, and they use a lot of Miles and Gwen's duality on how they are so much similar to one another, and how that slowly rotates and rips and tears and does all of these crazy things in front of your eyes that you're just unsure of where their relationship is actually going. It's not smooth sailing, and that's kind of the point of being a Spider-Man. You have all of these difficulties in front of you, but what really latches on, like the overarching theme of this entire film, is fate, is destiny, and the impossibility of changing that fate or destiny. It's not as simple as that, of course. It's very much grounded into you that it is done, that you cannot change fate, you cannot change your destiny. What is meant to happen will happen, and the film reiterates this constantly. From the very beginning, it reiterates this. However, Miles, being a character, wants to take it into his own hands. He wants to control his own destiny. He wants to control his own fate. Wielding that type of power comes with responsibility, comes with family, comes with support, comes with finding your own identity, and it kind of just plays perfectly into all of those themes and brings them closer to him as a Spider-Man, right, as Miles Morales. So he has become such a beautiful character from where his roots were, and experiencing all of these things, going through these hurdles and facing destiny head on. It's crazy when you think about it. It's ridiculous, but it works so beautifully for his story. But of course, it is not just his family. It's such a massive thing within this film, and how Miles navigates his mother and his father, and this idea of potentially telling them things. It's murky and it's difficult, and it's hard to truly navigate comfortably because you don't really know what you're getting yourself into. So it's incredible that all of this is paralleled perfectly with Gwen's story. You find out more about her, you find out more about her family, her responsibilities, what she hopes and wishes for, and her challenging her own destiny as well. And when you're balancing both Miles and Gwen, both of them beautifully conceptualized. Funny enough, they don't cannibalize each other at all. For me, that was my biggest worry when I was watching the film. I was like, okay, I really want to see more of Gwen, I want to see more of Miles. How are they going to interlock in a way that feels nice, that doesn't take away the agency of the other person? Does that make sense? So you leave that film loving Gwen, loving Miles, loving all of these different characters that get introduced, all of these different Spider-Men, which, mind you, there's a litany, there's a ton. And I would say that quote-unquote sequence is easily edge of your seat gripping type stuff, because you don't know what is going to happen. You don't know what the outcome is. The music, the visuals, the pure insanity, chaoticness of it. If you know what I'm talking about when it comes to that sequence, you know exactly what it is. And it all kind of narrows itself down to here. This singular moment with Miles making the decision, changing his destiny, wanting to change his fate, and deciding to do that. While it is massive in scale and very much has its consequences, you still can't fault him for it, because there's enough murkiness, there's enough in the middle there where something could be possible, and that is all that is needed. Hope. Miguel, my goodness. I wish I could say so much more about his character, how it's handled, what it's used for. All I will say is that not only is it a brilliant performance, but they know exactly how to handle that character perfectly to a T. Artistically, animation-wise, color-wise, music-wise, narratively, everything just blends together so beautifully, and that man is scary. He is horrifying within this film, especially with the music that accompanies him. Whew. I will say one of the most impressive things for me that I noticed a lot more of within this film than the previous, and I could be completely wrong, but is the shifting of colors. It sounds really simple at first, but it's a really great way to thematically play on different things, how to show emotion without actually expressing it. So the first place that you will notice this is a lot with Gwen, used in a way that's so efficient to show off where these characters are, her father, where she is mentally, emotionally, etc. This changing background or color palette palette that kind of encapsulates them both. It could be like this warm red to like this kind of dark pink, and then this kind of suffocating blue, and sometimes it's split down the middle, and it's very nicely woven in there artistically. It tells a story on top of the story. Does that make sense? It's more so used within its intimate moments. For example, it's used incredibly efficiently with Miguel all the way through the whole film. You know exactly what his character's about before he even says a word. That's just because of the colors that they use, how they frame it, the music that they give it. Everything just works in tangent together so perfectly. I am more than impressed with this film. I'm more than happy that they smashed out the park, and I'm even more excited for Beyond the Spider-Verse, because these films, from my knowledge, were created together. Pretty much every single ounce of it is pouring into that final film. It might be early to say, but that is easily going to be biggest film next year, and it will most likely tower over the entire trilogy. If you have not watched it, if you plan to watch it, if you want to watch it again, by all means, do it all. Go experience this film in any way that you can, whenever you can. You will not regret it. It'll make you laugh, it'll make you cry, it'll make you excited for the future. It may even make you love Spider-Man again. If you're iffy about Tom Holland or Andrew Garfield or Tobey, whatever, maybe you just don't really care about comic book films at all, this will make you fall in love with animation, with Spider-Man, with Miles Morales and Gwen. Leave a like or a comment, subscribe. It supports me a ton. I'd very much appreciate it.